everyone to our webinar, this time co-hosted by LTI and Chinese School Association in the United States. I am Tianyi, and we are very honored to have some experts from LTI, the exclusive licensee of ACTFL here, to talk about the Apple assessment and some other assessments for us. So mostly many of our member schools are interested in different assessment systems, especially those based on ACTFL standards. Those are developed US based and US developed. So today we have invited some experts to talk about these assessments, what they are, why we need to take these assessments, and how to take them. So yeah, without further ado, Gosha, would you like to introduce your colleagues?
Yes, absolutely. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Gosha White. I am the Director of Sales and Marketing for the academic market at Language Testing International. I am joined by my colleague, Leo Islas. He can introduce himself, but before he does, I just want to say a couple things. This is being recorded, so if you'd like, we can follow up in an email, send the link, or Tianyi, we can send it to you. So we can share it with the other teachers. And also, if you have questions during the webinar, please use the Q&A or the chat function to post your questions, and we will get to them probably towards the end of the webinar. We'll leave some time for questions. So, Tianyi?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. The webinar will be in English, but if you have some questions that you're not quite sure how to word, you can feel free to type it in Chinese and I can translate for you. I will try my best to answer some of them, but the least I can do is I can translate. So
sounds good. And right, another colleague will join a little bit late. She's wrapping up another meeting. Her name is Jennifer. So if you see her pop in, she's also from LTI. And I'm going to hand it off to Leo.
All right. Well, thank you, Gosha. Thank you, Tianyi. Really happy to be joining everyone across the country. I myself am in Southern California with a lot of people here on the call. So yeah, just really happy to have been invited and to speak to you all today about ACTFL assessments, why they're important, and why you should consider assessing your students in your various Chinese schools across the country. So a little bit about myself. As I mentioned, Southern California native, and yeah, representative of ACTFL assessments offered through LTI for sort of the western part of the United States, and joined with various colleagues. Okay, so today's outcomes are that we're going to learn about ACTFL and the importance of proficiency testing your students, explore the Apple assessment a little bit more in depth to build program relevance, really to see the Apple and its many uses, right? So perhaps maybe you're looking to place students into various levels of your Chinese programs. Maybe you want to benchmark their growth over the years. Or maybe you just want to, gauge sort of the efficacy of your teaching. So lots of importance there. And understand how assessment features can empower teachers and learners, and then we'll leave it with a Q&A towards the end. Okay, so I think some might be familiar with ACTFL, others maybe not, but the ACTFL is the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages. Some of you might be members, others, if you're not members, we would love to have you join. Essentially, ACTFL is a huge not-for-profit membership organization, well over 13,000 language professionals across the nation and internationally as well. They are known for developing the ACTFL proficiency guidelines, which is not only a domestic, but an international standard measure, unit measure of language proficiency. Just a month ago, ACTFL revised the ACTFL proficiency guidelines, the 2024 version. So all of the assessments that are offered at LTI, designed by ACTFL, have been sort of developed with these revised proficiency guidelines in mind. With that, it is it's ACTFL's assessment and research team that develop all of the assessments that we offer at Language Testing International. And we have been, like Tiani stated, the exclusive licensee of ACTFL assessments for well over, or just over 30 years now. Our markets span across academic, government, and corporate markets, and we do individualized testing for, working professionals or whomever just wants to certify their language abilities. And we test in over 120 languages in over 60 countries. Okay, so when it comes to researching language assessments, or if you're considering assessing your learners, it's really important that you fact check your language assessments. And what we mean by that is that according to the ACTFL proficiency guidelines, the ones that just have been released by ACTFL, an individual's level of proficiency in each domain is defined by 4 criteria represented by the acronym FACT. And that stands for functions, accuracy, content, and text type. So this means that the Apple assessment, which I'll talk a little bit more in depth about in other slides, the raters who we use rate on these 4 criteria. So it's a much more stringent and academically sort of rigorous process that the raters use to assign a rating to these to the various components of that assessment. Also, in order to receive a proficiency rating at a given level, an individual must demonstrate sustained ability to meet each of the FACT criteria for that level. So it's really important when considering, any language assessment that, if you're going to be reporting on the ACTFL scale or assigning an ACTFL rating, that the raters and the assessment use this criteria. And with ACTFL assessments, they all use this criteria. And at the bottom there, it says that only ACTFL assessments delivered by Language Testing International can confer a certified ACTFL rating and evaluate language ability on each of the FACT criteria. So only ACTFL assessments offered through LTI can essentially give an official ACTFL rating. So really important there to fact check your language assessments. Okay, and here we just have an assessment overview of the various types of assessments that can be considered for any a Chinese program or just the various assessments that we offer at LTI that are developed by ACTFL. Some of you may have taken an oral proficiency interview in your academic or professional careers. We have writing proficiency tests, the Apple assessment, and the Apple is the ACTFL assessment of performance towards proficiency in languages. Talk about that a little bit more in depth later on. We have a Latin assessment, listening proficiency tests, reading proficiency tests. All of these are developed with the revised ACTFL 2024 guidelines in mind. They are also externally researched and validated. That is something that sets ACTFL assessments apart from other assessments that are on the market, is the fact that they are researched and validated by third parties. The raters, and what I mean by raters are the people who assign the proficiency rating for all of the assessments. ACTFL prepares and certifies all the raters prior to them being able to rate any ACTFL assessment. And that's ongoing training that they also receive. What else? As I mentioned, we use these different types of assessments in academia, government, and sort of corporate clients as well. The ACTFL testing portals are also COPA and FERPA compliant, meaning that we safeguard student information at all levels, not just students, learners as well. COPA, it's the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. So again, the ACTFL proficiency guidelines are the backbone of all of the assessments. The raters undergo stringent criteria to become a rater, and then just ensuring that learner information is protected at all times. So on this slide, we have the language proficiency journey, right? So this is a route that your learners could potentially take, as maybe they take the Apple assessment in your Chinese Mandarin schools, right? They might take the Apple at various grade levels, I understand that these are students who might, be taking, who might be in immersion programs in their districts, or, at higher grade levels, maybe in a Chinese Mandarin world language program at their high schools. All that to say is that these tests are absolutely valid for any students that are in grades 3 through 12. If you have older learners as well in your programs, we can possibly give them an oral proficiency interview or an oral proficiency interview by computer. And then as the students eventually, matriculate after your programs, they can still continue to take maybe an OPI or a computerized version. Maybe they enter into a job that, requires a certain level of Chinese Mandarin writing. So we have writing proficiency tests as well. In some cases, well, just going back to the Apple assessment, many of these students, when they, they enter into junior or senior year of high school, will probably already take the Apple assessment in order for them to qualify for their state seal of biliteracy. I can tell you that the Apple assessment is, in terms of qualifying students for the seal of biliteracy, every year at LTI, we just keep seeing more and more. We keep sort of breaking our own records in terms of the number of students who are taking the Apple to qualify for their state seal. In certain cases, ACTFL assessments can be used to help students get college credit, or and in some cases I've seen even just sort of remove the requirement to take a foreign language in college as well. And then ultimately, if these students decide to enter into the workforce, right, by having an official ACTFL rating and certification, they can maybe get a leg up and get a higher salary, or have themselves, stand out a little bit more than other candidates for jobs who might not be biliterate or bilingual. We've also partnered with a company called Credly. So for like an OPI or a WPT, students can get a digital badge that they can put on their LinkedIn profiles, just to, again, show their level of Chinese Mandarin proficiency, be it speaking, writing, listening, or reading. Okay, so a little bit about the Apple assessment here, and just talking about performance and proficiency and what the difference is. So the Apple is, again, the ACTFL assessment of performance towards proficiency in languages. So it's a performance and a proficiency assessment. Proficiency is the ability to use, the language more in a real world, unrehearsed fashion, right? Where a learner might be asked a question or given a prompt to write about that they really don't have any prior knowledge of, and it's not testing any sort of content that might have already learned in the classroom. So it's just sort of on the spot. What can you tell me about, this topic or that, in an unrehearsed fashion? Performance is the ability to use the language that has been learned through, continued practice or in a more systemic way within the classroom. So the Apple's intention is to sort of merge those two together, is to get topics that students are learning about in your classes, what they might be learning about outside in their sort of regular school classes, but in a way that we're testing their knowledge of the language in a more sort of unrehearsed, spontaneous fashion. And I'll give a demo of what the one component of the assessment looks like in a little bit. But the intention of the Apple is to then have a positive washback effect into the classroom. So we want you to be able to collect, not just to know where your students are in terms of their proficiency in 4 skills, but to use that data to inform your curriculum, inform your teaching, whether it's by, hey, this group of students struggle to speak about this topic or write about that topic. With all of our reporting and being able to, listen to the responses or to read the responses, we want that information to have a positive impact on your curriculum and your teaching. Okay, so in terms of the Apple assessment, it is an online test that can be done on a Chromebook, tablet, computer. All of those work just fine. It has been developed for grades 3 through 12, like I was mentioning, to sort of merge what students are learning within your classes with what they can do outside in a more sort of unrehearsed, real-world fashion. There are three modes of communication that three modes of communication that are covered, those make up the components of the assessment, and those cover 4 skills, right? Reading, writing, listening, and speaking. I was saying that the interpersonal listening and speaking component is a simulated video chat that the learners have with a teenager in Chinese Mandarin. They have, for the interpersonal listening and speaking, up to 18 different opportunities to answer prompts. So there's 18, depending on the form, and I'll talk about that in a next slide, but between 16 to 18 chances to answer various prompts in Chinese Mandarin. We then have raters who listen to the responses and then assign a rating based on the fact criteria. Presentational writing, same thing, is meant to assess learners' spontaneous writing abilities in Chinese Mandarin. And one thing I should note about the writing for Chinese Mandarin is that we can rate traditional and simplified versions of the writing style. Those are the presentational writing is also then rated by an ACTFL trained and certified rater. We then have interpretive listening and reading. Those task types for those prompts are a little more like simplistic, a drag and drop, a multiple choice. There's no production on the student's end. That being said, the entire Apple assessment can take between an hour and a half to 2 hours to administer, because it's made up of these 4 components. But you can space these out throughout the course of a couple of days, couple of weeks. In working with like traditional classrooms, let's say at a high school, right? Different periods. So the programs might decide to, give one component of an assessment during this classroom period, another one during the next classroom period, or just even across multiple days. Giving the Apple assessment all at once can be a little bit much, I would say, on the student. So it's best to maybe space these out throughout the course of a couple of days. Not to say that it can't be done. With that, each component takes about 30 to 40 minutes on average to complete. So it is semi-designed for it to fit into a classroom period or a block or an hour. And all of the directions, instructional materials are all self-contained within the assessment itself. So there's nothing really that the teachers need to do in terms of administering the assessment. It's just a matter of making sure that the learners are logged into the testing portal. And I'll quickly show in the next couple of slides what a component looks like. Here we go. So on the Apple, there are 11 languages. I just highlighted Chinese Mandarin there since I know that's the one you're particularly interested in. And again, for the writing component, we have the traditional and simplified versions that can be rated. So I was going to show really quick what a component looks like. So I'm going to pull up another screen here. Not that one. And Gosha or Tiani, let me know if you can see the Chinese interpersonal listening and speaking component.
We can see it.
Okay, I'll click next over here. I've kind of skipped over a couple of steps just to get to the actual assessment. So click next over here. Here we have a...
Welcome to the interpersonal listening and speaking section. You're going to talk with a video chat partner who wants to know more about you, your school, and about life where you are. Please answer the questions as completely as you can. Before we get started, here are a few important reminders. After each video plays, the test starts recording immediately. The microphone button will turn red when it's recording. You will not be able to pause the recording. Talk with a clear and natural voice. Do not touch or blow into the microphone. This may interfere with the recording. To hear the question again, click on the replay video button. You must push the replay video button within 7 seconds. You can only replay the video once. Now it's time to speak with a video chat partner. Remember to answer their questions as completely as you can so they get to know you better. Sometimes you'll need to ask questions of your video chat partner. That's it. Say as much as you can and do your best. Good luck.
Okay, so you can see that there was a teacher who introduced that section via video, and that's the same for all of the components on the Apple. So there will be a teacher who just lays out a couple of rules, but also, I think, encourages the students to be successful. I'll click next over here.
你好，我叫许珠，你叫什么名字？
Okay, and so this is where the students would respond in Chinese Mandarin to that question, right? So by default, they can replay the video once within 7 seconds if they want to hear the prompt again. Otherwise, it's go time and they start recording their answer. So you can tell as I'm talking, right? She's nodding, smiling. So it's meant to mimic a real world conversation. Once I'm confident in my answer, I can click next. It's fine.
不好意思，我还想请问你几个问题。我妹妹要出远门，我有点儿担心她。我听说大部分的美国人都有手机，请告诉我一般美国人之间保持联系的方法。
Okay, and then same thing over here. So this is the demo site that I'm using. We encourage administrators, teachers, even students to take the demo prior to them actually taking the Apple. That way they learn the format of the assessment for the 4 components. And it just gives them a chance to, to practice their interpersonal listening and speaking, presentational writing, just different skills. That way, on test day, they're a little bit more confident in knowing, at least I know what the test looks like, right? But these are not the questions that they will necessarily be asked on the assessment. Okay, so once I'm done, click next.
Great job talking with your video chat partner. Keep up the good work.
Okay, so I'll go back to the slide over here. Okay. Okay, so over here on this graph, or this slide over here, rather, on the left-hand side, we have the ACTFL proficiency scale. But in the center there, we have the different ratings that a learner could get when taking the Apple, dependent on the form that is chosen for the learner. So I'll talk first about Form E. E stands for elementary, and that's the form that's recommended to give your learners who are 3rd and 4th graders. So for 3rd and 4th graders, we would give them Form E. And for Form E, we only assess those learners on the interpersonal listening and speaking component. I didn't show that demo, but it's slightly different for younger learners than it is for your maybe 5th through seniors in high school. Nonetheless, Form E, the prompts for the interpersonal listening and speaking, start off at a novice 1 level of ability, and work students up through novice 2, novice 3, all the way up to the intermediate 4 range. So you can think of the prompts getting very progressively more challenging for them, but we cover the novice range and intermediate range for Form E. Form A is appropriate for 5th grade all the way up to your senior or senior high school seniors age students. And so for Form A, we have the interpersonal listening and speaking, presentational writing, and interpretive listening and reading. And like Form E, those prompts start off at a novice. And what I mean by prompts are the questions that they're being asked for the video chat and the writing and the interpretive listening and reading. Same, at a novice 1 level of ability up through the novice range up to an intermediate range. Form A is a good assessment to give a learner who's never taken the Apple before, or just as a good first indicator as to what are my students' proficiency, because it covers the novice range. So you might have students who could very well be in intermediate ranges for speaking, but maybe their writing is in novice ranges, or vice versa, right? So when we get the score reports, you'll be able to tell sort of what the 4 skills, right, where your students are in terms of their proficiency. What was else are they going to mention about Form A? Well, with either form, so A and E, what we're doing is we're taking the different sort of ranges over here and giving you a much more granular look at what their proficiency is, right? So it's rather than telling, or giving your students a rating, an intermediate rating for 4 skills, they very well could be different levels within the intermediate range, right? So from I1 all the way up to an intermediate 4. And we provide guidance on what these different levels within the intermediate range, the novice range, mean, right? So if you have a student who's at an intermediate 1 range for speaking, we'll tell you what that means. And then if they are in intermediate 2 range for writing, we'll also be able to tell you what that means. Form B, then, on the other hand, is given for learners who already demonstrate, and either have taken Form A prior, or through just other means, that they're already proficient, or they're already at least at a novice 4 level of proficiency in the 4 skills. And in that case, Form B is appropriate because you're already sort of meeting them where they're at already. And Form B, like Form A, covers the intermediate range, but also gives students a chance to score, or to get a rating that is essentially higher. So with Form B, they can score all the way up to an advanced one, which is the highest that a student can get on the Apple assessment. Okay. So a little bit more about the Apple here, and just some assessment features to consider when considering a proficiency test. Our clients have told us that the Apple assessment is really easy to administer. With that, I showed the demo there. We have the demo for the writing, interpretive listening, interpretive reading that you can take in Chinese, that you as administrators or your students can take in Chinese Mandarin. And we also have the demo for the different forms. So you can give your 3rd and 4th graders a Form E demo. Students who would be taking Form A can take a Form A demo. And then for B, we also have a Form B demo. That demo that I showed there was for Form B. And you can choose which test form is best suited for your learners. If there ever is a case where you want to submit, or maybe a rating was off, or a student might have had like a bad test day or something, we can always go back and re-rate upon request a specific rating for a student. Also, our compliance with federal regulations and guidelines. Again, the test portals are COPA and FERPA compliant, meaning that we are safeguarding your learners' personal identifiable information. Also, the ability to request accommodations. So if you do have learners who might maybe need time extensions on the video chat portion, or closed captioning, any sort of accommodation that needs to be built into the assessment, we can do on the back end prior to that learner logging in and taking the assessment. We also believe that our testing portals are pretty clear. You have the clear in terms of what the students are meant to do. We have the teacher via video who introduces the instructions, and just tell students what's expected of them on the assessment. You can take the different components across different days or times. It doesn't need to be scheduled necessarily with us. It's available on demand, essentially. So you pick and choose the appropriate days to give the assessment. We'll have a look a little bit later at some reporting that we give as part of the Apple assessment that really is meant to help inform your programs. And then just at the bottom there, the fact that the Apple assessment, like all ACTFL assessments, are externally validated. The Apple is the only assessment sort of in the K through 12 space that can give an official ACTFL rating. And then, the fact check there, right? So the criteria that the raters use to assign the rating: function, accuracy, content, and text type. That's essentially what we're looking at with your learners' responses to give a rating. Okay, ease of Apple administration. We do have, like I said, the demo available in the different forms for Chinese Mandarin. I kind of briefly touched on this earlier, but as administrators and even your teachers, you'll be able to go back and listen to the responses for the video chat portion, and you'll also be able to read the responses for the presentational writing piece. So not only will you get a rating for those components, just being able to listen and to read the responses really gives you insights as to where the students where their strongest writing was, and maybe where there might be the need for remediation and certain prompts or certain topics, right? So that's also useful information for you to get, so that you can go back and give students more opportunity to maybe speak and write about those topics a little bit more in depth. We just have a whole host of resources as well available for educators, administrators as well. We have a whole website dedicated to the Apple assessment. We have our Language Testing International website, but we also have an Apple Central website. The demo suite, I just can't stress enough for everybody to get a good sense of what the format and layout of the Apple assessment looks like. If you wanted to sort of, as you're considering giving the Apple to your learners, maybe introducing the different task types or topics that are on the Apple in various ways throughout your curriculum, sort of give students a chance to speak and write about those topics that are on the Apple in advance of taking the Apple. And then we have the score descriptors and score reports over here. The score descriptors are what we use to sort of explain what the different levels of proficiency mean for the different components as well. So we write out what an N1 means for listening and speaking, what an I4 means for writing, and all of those. So it's quite easy to make sense of the report of the ratings once they come back. And all the while, we have a dedicated support team at LTI that's US based. So on testing days, if there's ever any questions or concerns or tech issues, if those come up, we have a US based support staff that can help out. We also have some just an academic integrity policy for students once they log into the testing portal, right? Just to hold them accountable for the Apple, making sure that they're not using any other outside resources or help from a friend. So they have this little sort of I agree over here prior to being able to take any component of the assessment. Within that, we do have like we have sort of built-in security protocols as well. So if a student logs, clicks into another window, or if they log out, they can always log back in. Their work is saved up to that point, but just ensuring that they're not clicking into other windows to maybe use outside resources. They would be logged out automatically. Okay. Again, just can't stress enough the fact that the Apple testing portals are COPPA compliant, so you can rest assured that your learner's personal identifiable information is safeguarded at all time. Talked a little bit about security features. So the copy paste feature is disabled. If they click into another window, they're logged out. They can still log back in and pick up where they left off. We just have security features in place to make sure that what's the word? can't think of the word right now, that we're just making sure that the assessment itself is just being safeguarded, right? I'm sure I'll think of that word in the next coming slides. Accessibility features. So again, we have an entire accommodations team at LTI that can build in any accommodations that might be needed. We are WCAG 2.2, I believe now, and ADA compliant. If there aren't any accommodations needed, students can still control like color schemes, font size. They can zoom in and out as well on the testing portal. Okay, so after a student completes all 4 components of the Apple assessment, they're then given an official ACTFL language certificate, which has the language they took the assessment in. In this particular example, it's Korean, but it would say Chinese Mandarin there. A summary of their scores, where they attend Chinese school, and then we also give them the Apple score report. So the Apple score report shows for each of the components that they took, right? There's 4 components: interpersonal listening and speaking, presentational writing, interpretive reading and listening, what their rating was. So hopefully it's not too small, but we describe what that score means for that skill that was assessed, and also provide some strategies for the students to then employ so that they can move up a level in proficiency. So in this particular example, this student did very well in Korean. I can tell that they took Form B because they got an A1 for some of the components there. Remember, Form B, A1 is the highest rating that a student can get. We also describe what an A1 means for listening and speaking, but still have some strategies there for them to employ. When you get these score reports back, though, they might, they might vary, right? You could have students who are stronger speakers than writers, or vice versa. This information is ultimately to be used, to be given to the students so that they know where their proficiency is in the different skills, but also for you as programs to see, hey, are all of our students within the range that we expect them to be in? Are they lower than what we expected? And even just for individualized coaching that the students, that you can give to the students to help them, continue on in their proficiency. We also have some different reporting tools that you can use for your programs. By default, we sort of segment students out by their grade, but there's other ways of exporting, sort of depending on how the leveling works within your Chinese schools. Maybe you have designated levels. There's different ways that we can sort of segment out the data where you can compare levels or grade levels with one another. At a sort of a global level, we can maybe you have different locations. Maybe you're a chain of Chinese schools within a given area, so you can compare school results depending on the different schools or locations, and again, looking at scores by grade level as well. This report over here is one of my favorite ones. It's the longitudinal data report. So over here, every time a student takes the Apple assessment, within a given year or grade level, we can show at a glance how that student did every time they took the Apple. So maybe they didn't take all of the components of the Apple, maybe they took 1 or 2 different components. Nonetheless, we'll show you how they're ultimately progressing towards proficiency within your program. Whether they're increasing with sort of what the outcomes are for your various levels. Are they plateauing? Are they digressing? Who knows? The report will show you how they're doing every time they take the Apple. And with that, I should say that the Apple is refreshed every year. So ACTFL revises the content within the Apple assessment every fall. It happens. So it could very well be that every time they take the Apple, let's say, grade 5, grade 6, 7, and 8, every year it will be a different version of the Apple as well. So ACTFL does a really good job of revising the content every year. The format of the assessment remains the same, but the content, the prompts change year over year. And here we just have some information on the different research articles that were made on the ACTFL. Again, they're externally validated. And can't stress enough the ACTFL certificate that the students are given. These are valid for 2 years, so they're recognized by ACTFL for 2 years. So let's say you did have a learner take this in Chinese Mandarin. Maybe they're a senior in high school, right? They want to enter into the workforce, or maybe use their Apple score to help qualify them for the seal of biliteracy at their high schools. Put this on their LinkedIn profile, whatever the situation might be. The ACTFL ratings that they get are valid for 2 years, and the students can use them however is best for themselves. Okay, using Apple to build your program's relevance. So I talked just briefly about the seal of biliteracy in the previous slide, but what the seal of biliteracy is, it's a recognition by a district or a school through the state that the student is biliterate or bilingual in another language. So I talked a little bit about the Apple being used for the seal of biliteracy within the nation, and every year we just see more and more programs who are interested in using the Apple for the seal of biliteracy. But more than that, it's used really to inform your curriculum and teaching strategies ultimately, right? The ability to sort of compare different grade levels to see how they're doing compared to one another, being able to listen to the responses, read the responses, all of that is meant for you as administrators in your program to sort of decipher the all of the ratings and the data to make informed decisions for your curriculums. Also, it's validating heritage, language, and culture amongst your populations. Maybe you have students who are native Chinese Mandarin speakers. Maybe you have heritage learners where it's spoken in the spoken at home, or maybe you have folks who just want to learn Chinese Mandarin and have had no prior knowledge of the language. Nonetheless, though, it's validating the language, right? And then fostering opportunities for students with a valid, recognized measure of language ability, whether they want to enter into community college, university, or the workforce, or anything else they decide to do after matriculating from your programs. And within the client, so what we essentially do is that we build out a test ordering website for all of our clients, and that's where all of the reporting filters back into. You can use this to get reports on completion rates, on the different, all of the reporting that I talked about, the comparing the grade levels is all done within this website. And that's what the graphic is there on the right-hand side. And just the power of the score report too, right? I would say that this can be used to give to the parents of the learners to sort of show how well, like the efficacy of your Chinese schools, how that's going for the students. Are they progressing at the levels that they should be in relation to the outcomes that you have for the various levels? It can guide student improvement by having students follow the strategies that we give to them to move up a proficiency level, and for really any reason that the students ultimately want to improve in their proficiency. Okay. A little bit about the seal of biliteracy over here. All 50 states are now on board for the seal of biliteracy. So it very well could be the case that you might have some students, some high school age students within your programs who are possibly already taking the Apple, or maybe not. Maybe this would be the first time that they took it, but nonetheless, they might be part of districts who participate in the Seal of Biliteracy. And again, what that is, it's an opportunity for them to be recognized on their transcripts or the diplomas that they're bilingual in English and then also another language, in this case, Chinese Mandarin. Okay. So making your program more relevant to learners over here. Students can ultimately, use their Apple ratings. Maybe their high schools aren't using the Apple, and then they can say, hey, I took this wonderful Apple assessment at my Chinese school, and I would like to use it to help me qualify for the Seal of Biliteracy. That can very well happen. They can put their ratings on a transcript or a resume. Maybe they want to enter into a college or a university, and maybe their Apple assessment, their ratings can be used to help them gain credit. Applications to a job or just various opportunities. Basically, there's lots of benefits to getting an official ACTFL rating, be it with the Apple assessment or any other one of our assessments that we offer. Okay, so why proficiency tests and why the Apple assessment? Right there, front and center in yellow, we have, again, is the fact that this is an ACTFL created assessment. It's rated by ACTFL trained and certified raters, and only ACTFL assessments rated by trained raters can give an official ACTFL rating. The fact criteria, function, accuracy, content and context, and text type, and then just the various reporting features that we offer to all of our clients. On the right-hand side, just the rigor and the ongoing training that the raters must go through in order to become an ACTFL trained and certified rater. And then our test security and accessibility is second to none. It's one of the many areas that separate us from other language assessments that are out there. On the left-hand side, we have at the bottom there, the interpersonal listening and speaking component. That's unique to the Apple test. No other, at least within the K through 12 space, no other language assessment has that simulated video chat feature or component of an assessment. Other assessments might have you, look at a picture, describe what you're seeing. It's not a true sort of measure of a student's or a learner's ability to sort of interact in an interpersonal way. So that's a unique feature, a unique component that no other language assessment has, is the interpersonal listening and speaking. And then, of course, the fact that it's rated by an ACTFL trained and certified rater. Okay. So here we just have, if you want to get involved and learn a little bit more about ACTFL, we would love to have you join it. If you're not familiar with ACTFL already, we are always looking for more raters as well. So I know we're, if you wanted to take a deeper dive into the Apple assessment and how the ins and outs of the assessment work, becoming a rater is a really good way to do that. So more information, I can give that to Tiani to pass out as well. Okay, and I will conclude there with my contact information. Please reach out to me with any questions. I'm sure Tiani will be disseminating more information as well. And my email address is there for you to contact me. So I'll stop it there. And I think
we got lots of questions.
We have a lot of questions, right? Okay, so
we tried to answer in the chat, but in case, in case others didn't see it, but
okay. Yeah, I see the chat is at 99 plus.
Yes, lots of great questions. So thank you everybody for being so engaged. This is amazing. So I want to speak a little bit about the rater thing. So you need to keep in mind that the productive skills on the Apple, so the speaking and the writing, they are rated by humans. So they are ACTFL certified raters, right? So these are people who went through a rigorous workshop by ACTFL, and they're certified to rate ACTFL assessments to rate the apple. So as Leo said, we always welcome new raters. And I believe ACTFL is recruiting raters right now, so we can share this information with Tiani if anyone is interested in becoming an ACTFL rater. We always welcome new raters. We had a lot of questions about how to prepare for the apple. Is there a study guide? Is there, practice? So Jen, do you want to speak a little bit about that and why, why there might not be, because it's a proficiency test and not really an achievement test?
I'm happy to speak about that. And I hope I'm getting everyone's questions there in the chat okay too. But I want you to think about the context of if we were meeting today and someone said, what do you do to prepare for conversation meeting this new person? Would you expect like, oh, here's a list of all the things to prepare for a conversation with a new person? It's just not really how real life is, right? Or if you're going to walk into a grocery store, how do you prepare for being able to ask questions about whatever might happen, like where are the noodles, or why are there no fresh bananas in the store today, or whatever? You can't prepare for real life conversations. And so what ACTFL wants us to really kind of shift the lens on here is to be thinking about how can your students use language to convey information? So what can they do with the language? When a question comes up, what can they do with the language ability that they have to respond to the prompt? And just do the best they can. There's no right or wrong answer. There's no perfect answer. The answer that you want to encourage students to give is one that shows what they can do with the language. So if a question comes up that says, you're going to visit, you have an exchange student coming to your school who's going to visit your hometown. What are 4 things that you want them to know about your hometown? Well, that's great if you have that prompt ahead of time and you can memorize and practice and have a really perfect response prepared, but that would be a performance, and we're really trying to elicit proficiency. So we want students to have an experience where it's like, oh yeah, okay, so if someone did ask me that, how would I respond? Or if someone asked me something else, like, I don't know what they might ask me, but I know that I can try to use language strategically with the things I do know to respond to whatever question comes up.
Yeah.
Is that it?
We often say you can't fail a proficiency test, right? There is no failing, because the proficiency test really tells you where you are at this moment on your learning journey, right? Today you might be novice low, but in 3 months you might be novice mid, right? Because you're continuously learning. If you have an achievement test like the AP test, that test you can fail, right? Because there is a right or wrong answer. So that's sort of the distinction. So what we tell students to prepare for a proficiency test, just practice, watch, immerse yourself in the language, read a lot, listen, a lot, and use your language, right? You're not going to fail this test. Even maybe you might not use a form correctly once or twice, but again, remember the 4 criteria. You're being measured on all 4 criteria, whether you are understood, right? Whether you can communicate. So that's the answer. But that said, we have resources that you can use to kind of help students along, right, as they're learning the language. Another question
I wanted to
was
add
about
to that. If
yes, please, Tiani, go.
Yeah. So I wanted to use an analogy of the TOEFL test. I know a lot of the teachers in the audience, like myself, were international students who came from another country. And to be able to study here, we needed to take the TOEFL test or the IELTS test and to show a certain level of English proficiency. So how do you prepare for the TOEFL test? I mean, I never really prepared for the TOEFL test. I just immerse myself in the language and use it in academic settings and try to improve my general proficiency of the test. And even if I can do a lot of practice tests, I can do a lot of mock testing. And when I take the real test, it's never going to be exactly the same. But nevertheless, I could still do very well if I have a very high proficiency of the language. So I guess for people who are like fixated on study guides, it's like it's time to change that mindset. It's not
That's excellent. That's an
to
excellent
the
example.
test kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yang Guo asks, so how does the testing result look like? So Leo was showing you that after the tests are rated, in the admin site, every student will receive a report, and it will tell them this is your level of proficiency that you demonstrated. That means that you are at this level. This is the score description will tell you what you can currently do, what you can what you are able to do with the language to communicate, and then it will give you a strategy, some strategies to employ, to help students progress. So you might have students of various levels, right, in your class, and that test will tell you where they are on the proficiency journey, their language learning journey. So what we say, and it's also true for other ACTFL assessments. We spoke a lot about the Apple, but of course, if you have, if you are in higher education or you have students who are older than 18, we have other ACTFL assessments for various skills, reading, listening, speaking, that students can take or learners can take to certify their language skills. And they will always receive that certificate. That's an official certificate that's recognized by colleges in the United States, government, the US government, or professional settings. And all those tests are delivered online. So students can take them at home. There's remote proctoring. They can schedule it anytime. There isn't a window when you can test for any of these tests. You can schedule the tests, or you can you can register for the Apple test today and you can administer them tomorrow. There's really no testing window or a need to go to a testing center. So, and we were talking about the value of these assessments, and they're really valuable if you're going into academic or professional lives, and you want to certify your language abilities. All right, what other questions do we have? There are a lot. The price. There's the price. So Leo, want to talk about the price of the Apple?
Sure. Yeah, so the Apple for all 4 components is $20. And that would be for the interpersonal listening and speaking, presentational writing, and interpretive reading and listening. However, if your program decides to only assess on one of the or you can kind of choose a la carte the different components. So if you did that, the interpersonal listening and speaking is $10, presentational writing is $5, and the interpretive listening and reading are bundled together when you order it for $5, but they're 2 different components on the testing portal. So $20 complete assessment. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, complete assessments, $20. And there's a lot of back and forth. It's like, do the states require all 4 components or not? It really depends on the state. I think vast majority of states require all 4 components of the Apple to qualify students for the seal of biliteracy. How long does it take for each test? So we mentioned earlier that was between 30 to 45 minutes per section. And it's important to know that each section of the test can be taken separately. So you don't have to have your students take all sections of the test in one sitting. You can, avoid test fatigue by not even assigning. Students can choose whichever section they want to do, but you can, divide it among, different days or so students, don't feel tired or, stressed. How many questions for each component? Do you have that answer, Leo?
Yeah, so for the interpersonal listening and speaking component, Form A is 18 prompts. Form B is 16 prompts for the listening and speaking component. For the writing, 6 prompts.
Yep. And the listening and reading are multiple choice, so those are scored by the computer. Okay. There's a question. Yang Guo asked, the topics that students are able to talk depend on their age. You're absolutely right. So within the forms of the test, you can see when you selecting the tests for your students in the admin side, you specify the grade, right? The grade level of the students, which means that the test that they will get will be suitable for their age. Of course, we don't want to give 5th graders a test that is suitable for high school students, right? We don't do that. So the system will select the version of the test that's suitable for their age. All right. I know Jen is furiously responding to all the questions, so thank you, Jen. I know we're past the hour, so I'm trying to remember what other questions were there, but I think we covered.
Yeah, I think you covered
think
most
we
of them
covered
really
most of
well.
them, yes.
Again,
And
thank you
listen, if
so
there are
much
more
for your time.
questions, yeah, please reach out, let us know. Tiani, I will send you the link to the recording in the next day or two. And then also,
To become a
all the
rater.
links that we... Say again?
How to become a rater. Some people were interested.
How to sign up for the rater workshop, and also, all the links to resources.
Mm-hmm.
See in the chat, I put the link on the current rater application window that closes August 1st. So if you're interested in becoming a rater, and like Leo said, I really encourage you to try doing that if you have the time or interest to do so. I think it improves your own practice, but it also really helps you be able to kind of contribute to the growth and development of other students as well. So I think it's a good opportunity.
Yeah, there was also, I just remembered, there was a really excellent question about how does the, proficiency-based testing really affect how languages are taught in schools? And I think, Jen, you mentioned in your response that more and more schools are shifting to the proficiency-based instruction. So, ACTFL offers a lot of resources to teachers on, how to sort of transition to, proficiency-based teaching. So, in that respect, those assessments really fit well with that approach. As OPI tester, is it the same to be an Apple tester? Just apply. I think it's different. The training is different. The OPI is a different test. So you would have to go through the Apple workshop, which we strongly encourage. We love our OPI testers and we love our Apple test raters. So please, if you're interested, sign up.
I would like to speak to two questions I saw. One was, can you register for yourself for the test? I think so. Well, I think it depends on the tester, how old you are. If you're a 3rd grader, I would assume you will need some help from adults. But if you're, let's say, a high schooler or an adult, you can register for the test yourself at home and take it at home. At least that's my understanding. And then
for the Apple, it's the Leo, you wanted to speak to it, so go for it.
Yeah, so for the if it's any other assessment like an OPI or WPT, then if it's an adult, then absolutely they can register themselves. But if it's for the Apple assessment, it needs to be ordered by an academic institution. So any one of the schools here can get set up with an account, and then they can order the assessments on behalf of the student.
Yeah, so let's say the admins at Chinese schools, you would be able to become a testing center, and then
Exactly.
you can have an account and sign up your students.
Exactly. So if you create an account with us, then you are able to request the tests for your students and administer. And it's important to know that you don't pay for the tests until they're rated. So you know, you don't have to pay up front. If you don't know how many students will test, you know, you can request 100 tests. But if only 20 students take the test, you are only invoiced for 20 tests. So that's an important distinction. And of course, the account is free, yes. You don't have to pay to establish an admin account with us. Yes, Jean, you can do that. Absolutely. It's, you know, it's up to you how you want to set it up. But Jen, we have a heritage, at least a couple heritage Chinese schools, no? That are set up with testing with the Apple?
Yes, we actually have several across the country who are using the Apple test.
Yeah. So the equipment, Wi-Fi, either a laptop, Chromebook, or iPad, and a headset with a microphone. So these are the requirements. And in the demo test, we strongly encourage everybody to go through the system requirements, the system check, to make sure that, you know, everything is working. And if something is not working, you will get an information. So you need a headset with microphone. You don't need video. You just got to make sure that your microphone is working, that, you know, you can hear well, and then you can, you know, you can log in with the Wi-Fi. Yeah, Leo is showing the system check. So we encourage you to go through that, because it will, you know, it will show you if there's something that is not working properly, and you can troubleshoot ahead of time rather than on the testing day.
And for
Thanks,
those of
Leo.
you who are interested, well, I signed up. Here's the link. I'm going to put it in the chat to sign up for the LTI newsletter. A lot of interesting things are coming up, like the scholarship for CF biliteracy that we mentioned earlier. I saw that in the newsletter. So for
yes, if you have students qualifying for the seal, please encourage them to apply. The application window is open till May 31st. Great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for such a engaged audience. We really appreciate it and love it.
You
Thank you
all
for all the
three so
questions.
much for your time.
Thank you, Tiani.